first guest episode here on the P3 podcast. This is Ian Plaskoff with you, and today's featured guest just returned back to the United States a couple months ago. It's international hockey superstar, Wes Jung. Wes, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ian. How's it going?
Pretty good. So, Wes, I know you've been playing hockey for a long time, so take us through a list of teams, when you started playing, just your background in hockey.
So I started playing hockey when I was 3 years old, solid 14 years ago. Like a week ago I started, actually, so 14 years ago. And so I started out in mini mites, no one learned to skate, all of that stuff. I was on purple team when I was like 4. That was sick. Played goalie, everything like that. And and then after that, do you know the Indianapolis Ice? Do you remember that team?
Yeah, the former AHL team.
Yeah, the affiliate, yeah. And they're not a thing anymore, but it was kind of the same thing they had with the Junior Fuel nowadays. I played for the Junior Ice when I was younger, and that was travel, all of that stuff. And then from there, after they got disbanded, a lot of kids my age split into different teams throughout Indianapolis. And I went to the Indy Strong, which was short-lived. And from there, I went to play for the Junior Fuel, which is part of the ECHL team. The Indianapolis Fuel. And so it was kind of the same deal with the Junior Ice. And so I played with the Junior Fuel up until my high school, where I played part-time with the Buff Braves, part-time with the Junior Fuel. And then I had to make a choice my sophomore year where I had to decide, because I made the 15s AAA team for the Fuel, but it was my brother's senior year. And I knew I would never have a chance to play hockey with him on the same team, everything like that, ever again in my life. So I chose to play with my brother. But since I made the 15 AAA for the Fuel, they still wanted to see me play. And so then I double rostered with the AA team. And the coach was Coach Blasius, which I can get into that later. That's a whole other thing. But I played with the Buff team and the Junior Fuel. And then after that is where things kind of got a little bit crazy. And I can explain later, but I talked to a team that saw me at a showcase event in Montreal, or a showcase event actually in Chicago, but the team is from Montreal, and I ended up playing there last season, and this year I signed with the 18s AAA Junior Fuel.
So you played 13 years in America and 1 year in Canada, correct?
Exactly.
So what was it like playing in Canada? They have a different atmosphere around hockey over there. How is it different from the U.S. to Canada in terms of your hockey play, the fans, the atmosphere, all of that?
So to be 100% honest, it is not at all the same. It is vastly different. And the atmosphere in the locker room, on the ice, the way practices are run, everything is a completely different form of hockey. I'd never seen anything like it. To start, just when I walked into the rink, besides everything being in French, I didn't really understand, but it was just nothing I'd experienced before, just in the general environment I was in. There was no politics of kind of like local hockey here in Indiana. There was no politics. No one knew who each other was. There was kind of a weird sense, but it was exciting. There were so many kids from European countries in the room. There was a kid from the United Kingdom, South Korea, the Netherlands, Slovakia, Slovenia, one other kid from America. He was the only one that spoke English. A bunch of kids from Montreal, some kid from Vancouver, Japan. It was nothing I'd ever felt before. And when we got on the ice, it was amazing. I'd never felt a practice like that before. Obviously difficult, but fun. And I ended up finding out that coach, my head coach for the year, was from South Africa, and the assistant coach was from Slovenia, and the other one was from Slovakia. So in terms of hockey, it was a very different style of hockey as to American hockey. It was very precise and perfect and exact. It was European hockey, which is very different. Not that American isn't, but it's just different in the sense of how they run practices and how they play their game. And so the entire community was amazing around the team. It was different from American in a lot of ways, but it wasn't a high school team. But unlike the club teams in the area, there were fans. including the families, but the families' friends, the families' like grandparents, all of that, they all came to every local game. And literally kids from that I had no idea who they were coming to the games. And the general atmosphere around the game was a lot more positive.
So you listed out your teammates all from around the world. So how difficult was it to play such a complicated game when not everyone spoke the same language?
That was actually one of the biggest challenges that we had as a team. And our coach strived, and that made it his goal to make communication, because that's what's necessary to be well hockey. And that he strove to make communication the strong point of our team, whether it be like we spent hours doing team building activities, sitting down in meetings, literally just the dumbest stuff to get us to speak to each other without speaking the same language.
So eventually did one language kind of catch on, or did everyone still speak their own language and you just kind of worked with it through either signals or different signs or something like that?
Well, we kind of, as weird as it sounds, another thing I can speak on is learning English from another language, whether it be South Korean to French, is a lot easier than learning French from English or any other language from English. So by the end of the year, everyone could speak English, but it didn't really matter at that point. It mattered when we were off the ice, but on the ice, we had our own kind of signals and phrases that everyone knew what they meant, and everyone kind of translated quickly in their head. I forget exactly what it was, but when we played Team Italy, they were picking up on it because some of them were like Italian phrases for certain like plays we wanted to do and face-off plays. But in general, the coach made a lot of strides in getting us to communicate when, another thing I talk of is the kid that I lived with didn't speak English. But he was like my best friend when I was up there. And part of the issue that we kind of had, it was kind of like with the team, like he wanted to say something to me, we were playing Xbox or something like that, he would get out his phone and type in Google Translate. Very weird.
And the whole family didn't speak English, right, in the house that you were living in?
Yeah, pretty much, except they had the mom and the sister had a general understanding of English just from basic. The sister kind of knew, but the mom had to know English because she's actually the head manager of customer relations for Staples in Canada and America, and she stays at home, so she has to learn English. Her and the daughter were the only ones that I could really talk to in the house.
So those are quite a few differences from the U.S. to Canada. So what were some of the similarities that you saw between your hockey play here and overseas? Or not overseas, but up north.
Yeah. While there were a lot of differences, the basic game was the same. And the same, if not more, in Canada, it just felt a little bit more, still kind of talking on like differences, but the general way hockey was looked at in Canada was a lot more positive than it was in the States. Not that it's negative here, but like everywhere, everything was hockey, which I loved personally, but if you didn't like hockey, I wouldn't go there. But like everyone talked about it. The school that I went to, we can talk about that later, but the school that I went to, like we were the kids in the school, like they talked about us every day, morning announcements, like we were allowed to be late because we had practice in the morning. But similarities, basically just the essence of the game, kind of like it was grounded, it stayed the same, and the competitiveness of it all. But with a lot of like playing American teams is where I really saw, I thought it was similar when I went there, except for the atmosphere. I thought it was like the same game. The only time I really saw those differences is when we played American teams that I used to play in the past, like the year before that. But I played American teams with this new hockey kind of system, and it worked better.
And I know one more similarity was your American driver's license. Do you want to say something about that, how your friends in Canada reacted to that?
One thing I was definitely surprised by was I kind of had an idea of it when I went in, but no one my age could drive. It was, even though they were my age, it kind of felt like I was like 13 or 14 again, because like if they wanted to hang out with each other or go to each other's house, they had to ask their mom to do it. And part of that is I became kind of like, I don't want to say popular in the sense, but in the school, I was the only one that could drive. I was the kid from America, all that stuff. And while there were some difficulties with my driving and driver's license while I was there, but that's a different story. But everyone was kind of surprised that I could drive, and I was like younger than some of the kids there. And the sense of that, I kind of became like a chauffeur for some kids, which I loved and hated at the same time. But it was a different atmosphere, and like just the way driving is viewed up there is completely different than it is here.
So bringing it back to the U.S., what brings you back here? And I know you're staying for this year, and we'll talk about your future plans later, but what's the reason you're back here and leaving Canada?
So it's a whole lot of reasons, it was a whole lot of reasons, but the essence of it was when I came back, I felt like I was home. Like even when I walked in to the airport coming back from Montreal, it felt normal. Like I'm actually drinking a Chick-fil-A chocolate shake right now, but I had a lot of Tim Hortons when I was in Canada. But every time I would order food or something like that, I would have to speak in French, or if I spoke English, they would have to find the janitor or like the one person that spoke English in the whole place. It was just inconvenient, and I never really felt like I loved it there. The entire experience was great, but you just can't compare it to home and everything along with that. And in the few months of being home for the summer and everything, seeing all my friends I can talk about that later with the team here, but getting to find out there was an opportunity for me to play hockey here and graduate for the second time, actually, with my twin sister and all my lifelong friends, and all of that was too big of an opportunity to pass up. Playing actually now better hockey than what would have happened if I went back.
So do you want to share the story about the late notice of a tryout, and then I'll let you finish it off. So your tryout for the junior fuel here, which brought you back?
So there's some complications with that, but it was very weird because head coach Brian Gratz and I had some communication when I came back, and because he found out I was back, I sent him an email, everything like that, and I never went to junior fuel tryouts. I was 100% committed on going back to Canada. The only thing I hadn't done yet was sign the papers. And so I had no intention of even trying out for the junior fuel. I was still in Montreal when they had their tryouts. I heard some of my friends were going. I didn't really care. But when I came back, I was looking into their season and what they were going to do and all of those things. And I thought this could actually be a possibility. So I reached out to the coach and I told him my story, everything. He actually knew and heard who I was from other people, but he invited me to skate with their development, like their first development weekend with the new team. And there's a lot of, I don't want to say drama, but there's a lot of the kids on that team that really don't love me. I can't really say too much about that, but to them, I was kind of, because I made the AAA team and then I left and went to Montreal. So a lot of kids didn't love that, and it kind of came down to the fact that they all knew who I was, but I didn't know who most of them were. So when I went to this first development weekend, I didn't even know if I could make the team. I had confidence going into it, obviously, but with the coach, he wanted to talk. We had a long conversation on the phone, and it was a lot of skating and working out those 3 days, but afterwards, we had a long phone call. He said he needed to talk to all of his coaching staff, but he was really impressed. And then I was actually bowling with Ian Plaskoff and Andrew Swed when he's sitting here right now, actually. But I was actually bowling when I got the phone call, and he offered me a spot, and I jumped right on it. And after that, things have been kind of crazy since. I had to reapply to Brebeuf, where I went for 2 years, and get my classes done, go now study for the SAT or ACT and all of that stuff, and now I have to write an essay, and it's kind of crazy, but I'm loving every second of it.
Yeah, I remember at the bowling alley, as soon as you got that call it was just pure chaos. You were calling and texting your parents, getting all your high school applications set up and reapplied. We were going over classes to take like as soon as you got the call. And we were just so happy for you to be back in the U.S. We missed you last year.
Thanks. Yeah.
And yeah, so it's a lot of SAT, ACT, just super fun things to do, typical American high school experience. But let's continue on to the American high school experience. And in your first 2 years and over the summer, we've had a couple events at school. How has it differed from your Canadian high school experience?
So one thing that I noticed when I walked into the high school in Canada was how different it was. While the same kind of idea, they have a very different school system. And I actually, when I said graduate twice a few minutes ago, I graduated last year because in Quebec, their school system is, their high school goes to grade 11, then they go on to CEGEP for like a year to 3 years, which is kind of a mixture of high school and college, but it's more focused on what you want to do. And then after you go to university for like only 4 years and you're done. But the school that I went to, I had to go to. I couldn't choose where I went because it was the only English school in the area. And it was very small, smaller than the house we're in right now, actually. And it was like an office building. It was a horrible school experience regarding the school. Everything socially about the school, everything besides the education was amazing, but like comparing it to Brebeuf, it was an insane difference. The teachers like didn't care. My mom didn't find out about my grades until like 6 months of emailing the front desk, and I didn't really tell her, but she eventually found out and figured things out. But even the general atmosphere, like we didn't have any breaks. We had lunch and that was it, and like the general way that education was viewed there was different.
And was it taught in English or was it taught in French?
Well, it was taught in English, but I think part of the reason why I was so poor is it was the education was because it was the only English teaching school within like 3 hour radius. So everyone that spoke English kind of had to go there, which kind of is why I think it was so expensive and not the best education, because it's the singled out education.
And the school we go to here in Indy Brebeuf is a college prep school. And so from day one, we are getting ready for college, getting applications, college counselors, all that stuff. We have a schedule kind of like a college schedule with big breaks throughout the day. But there was none of that in your Canadian school, correct?
Yeah, there's nothing, there wasn't really a structure. There was no future planning in that school. It was just that year of education. That's it.
And yesterday we had a whole day long workshop for the Common App at school. So how did that feel, like actually getting help with college and like being back in an American high school with all your old friends from last year and the year before? And so, yeah, how was it like back in a college prep school with the people you know?
Well, first thought was it was amazing. I saw a bunch of kids I hadn't seen in a year, if not more. I saw all my friends, which was amazing. And then another side of it was overwhelming because I had nothing done, and all these kids spent like 6 months writing their essay and have been preparing now for 3 years for this kind of event and preparing for college. And it was slightly overwhelming, but at the same time, I asked a question, and I don't really remember her name, but the teacher sat down with me for like almost an hour and a half trying to figure things out. I pretty much explained, like, I just got in the school yesterday and I have nothing done. What should I do? And she sat down and worked with me for like an hour and a half on what I needed to do, which I didn't experience for a whole year. And that part just by itself was kind of crazy. While I didn't have too much to kind of start working on, it was kind of unorganized by me, but organized at the same time. But in general, I loved that experience of being in a controlled environment, seeing the people that I love, all of that stuff.
And I know that it was a lot more difficult for you because as soon as you got accepted to the junior fuel program, like the day after, correct, you were going to New Mexico for a backpacking trip for 10 days, right?
Yeah, I just came back. I backpacked. I was gone for 12 days, but I was backpacking for 10 days in New Mexico. We had to drive there and back. It was an amazing experience. I went with my dad and a few other guys, but another kind of why I was glad the trip happened is it was an escape from kind of all the insane stuff happening in my life. I had no service, none of that stuff, which some people think is kind of crazy. Went like 70 miles, 12,000 feet straight up. We're at like 100, I don't know right now, but the experience was great, and it was a really great escape from all the crazy stuff happening. And as Ian, you know, everything was kind of insane and happening all at once, and it was kind of nice to not deal with that for a second.
And I think I have to throw this in here. Every school gets asked about the lunch. What was the school lunch like in Canada? Because it probably is different than American school lunch.
It was, I don't want to say it was better, because I've heard Brebeuf has improved their lunch as well.
Definitely.
And but the food was different. It wasn't like burgers and chicken tenders. It was like pasta and like solid like physical meals. Although sometimes the quality wasn't too great. It was just a different experience. Like they didn't have any system where I could put money on. I could put like $300 on a card for the whole year. I had to bring a loonie and a toonie, which is the $1 and $2 coins, to school every time I wanted to get something. I had way too many brownies, but it was kind of like an a la carte system, I guess. And I had like a ticket where I could eat the lunch without paying like $9 every single day, which was a benefit and not a benefit. But something that was also different, in case it was like a bad lunch, was in this school, if you were above secondary 3, which in their eyes is grade 9, if you're above a freshman in American high school, you can leave the campus, which is good because it's a block. But like I could walk to Wendy's, which they had Wendy's up there, and I could just kind of get out of that school during the very limited break time that we had.
And this can include like restaurants and businesses and things like that. What like American establishments did you miss while you were in Canada the most?
Well, one thing that I'm actively eating right now is Chick-fil-A. Big supporter of Chick-fil-A, and just honestly the convenience of, probably not great for you, but all this amazing like food, fast food, Chipotle, Qdoba, all of this stuff that you can get whenever you want, however you want. It was just not an option when I was there. And especially part of the issue was if I was in Toronto, it'd be kind of different. But in Quebec, they're French. They want to keep their French heritage. They don't want the American kind of side of things getting into how they live. So besides McDonald's, Wendy's, and Burger King, everything was it was just different. Like all the places were their own thing I never had before. They were way too healthy and good for you, and which meant they didn't taste as good.
And I know you were busy playing hockey a lot of the year, but I know you're big here on Top Golf and go-karting and activities like that. What was the activity scene there in Quebec? What was it like?
Roughly similar things, a little less outdoor stuff because everything is covered in snow for like half the year. But the one thing I was able to do really before the season started was golf. The golf course I went to was actually very nice, but it was about the same price as my local one here that is kind of cheap and not so great. But I golfed a lot when I was up there until the winter, of course. But I actually found a part of the reason because it was a legit organized hockey team. I found myself with a little less free time than I would have liked. And part of that is I had to make sacrifices like not going to Topgolf all the time, not hanging out with my friends all the time, which a lot of kids throughout the year couldn't handle the amount of commitment you had to make. But this program's strong suit was development and getting people prepared for junior hockey and moving them on to like committed, like hard, like the real life of hockey and how it has to be. So while I didn't love it at first, it well prepared me for what was in the future.
So yeah, you were talking about like preparing you for the future through that program, but now that you've left the program, what's your next step?
So part of it is it worked. Their like idea of moving kids on to better and future programs. And right now, like I said, I'm going to play for the junior fuel in the area. And after that, the goal is juniors. While another weird thing about um, the Common App and all of this essay stuff, workshop applying for colleges, there's a very good chance I will not be going to college next year. That is not to say I will not be going to college, but my future, I guess, how everything is going to work is very different from the normal, like, even if it's not normal, but like you guys are applying to colleges. Andrew's wearing a college shirt right now. He's like everyone is applying to colleges, planning their future. I have a little bit more time to figure out what I want to do simply because of the recruiting process and how it kind of works in my environment. Like, I will likely be playing junior hockey for a year to 2 years just so I can play NCAA hockey, which is the goal. That's the next step for me.
And where's your dream college to play hockey at?
One of the best colleges in hockey right now would have to be UMass, University of Massachusetts, but even like Boston College and other places like that. One place I thought would be the East Coast is primarily where all the D1 schools are for hockey, but one thing one place I would definitely be interested in going is the University of Alaska in like Anchorage or something like that. I don't know, but they have a very good hockey program there, and I think it would be a really good experience.
And I know a lot of people want to know, are you going to be double rostering again and playing for Brebeuf, or are you just going to be playing for the Fuel?
As much as I would like to play for Brebeuf this year, I think it will not be physically possible simply because of the commitment. It is very similar now, I realize too. Another similarity is the high-level program that I was at last year is the Junior Fuel changed from the disorganized program it used to be. Now it is organized, dedicated to moving people on and keeping up with that process. So if it's possible, I would love to play a game or two with the Braves. I personally don't think I can play for them with legal reasons and me actually signing with teams. But if it's possible, I would want to, but I don't really see it working out that way.
And apart from hockey at Brebeuf next year, are you looking at doing any extracurriculars outside of school, like club sports? Or I know Andrew's over here wanting you to play ultimate frisbee. Yeah. What do you think's on the table for next year?
Well, depending on how it works out, because I obviously would want to play for hockey, everything like that. Like legal reasons, I don't think I can, but I really want to play a senior sport kind of at Brebeuf, and well, Andrew has talked to me a lot about ultimate frisbee, and I'm actually interested, and I want to play a sport, whether that be ultimate frisbee or I played for the JV golf team my sophomore year, and really I want another kind of checking back, another kind of reason for staying is a normal high school experience, like I'm talking to you guys, seeing my friends every day, that kind of thing, going and playing sports just for fun, all of that kind of stuff, while also living like my dream of moving on and hockey and everything.
All right, and then last thing, Wes, what do you have to say to people in your situation kind of debating, should I go to Canada if they got the offer? Should I come back to the US? Or just any advice on the hockey players out there?
One thing just from my experience is one thing that was the biggest decision factor kind of that every single person I look to for advice has told me, and whether I should stay or come back or all of that stuff. If you are forced to make a decision, don't listen to anybody else. You have to make a decision for yourself. And I had friends from in Canada telling me like, oh yeah, come back, it's gonna be so fun. And I had friends here clearly telling me, oh yeah, stay, it'd be so fun. But like I had to kind of even block out my mom and my sister and my brother and all of them, because everyone's gonna have an interest. And while it may be what they think is best for you, if like you just kind of have to decide what you think is best for your future. And if you seriously are committed to this like dream, I guess, you just have to make a decision based off of what you want and what feels right in the moment.
All right, that just about does it. Wes, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Ian. It's a great time. Great podcast.
And to the listener, thank you for listening to the P3 podcast. This is Ian Plaskoff, and see you next time.
Thanks, guys.